For the shape facing, we are going to need to have the bodice front and the front facing. The shape facing is used to finish off a neck edge, sometimes a sleeve, and even a skirt, so that the raw edge is completely concealed. The first thing that you will need to do with your front facing is to finish the lower edge. For your sample, you are going to take the lower edge, and that is the one without the notch, to the ironing board, and you are going to press that under 1/4 of an inch. Press it well so that it does not slip when you're stitching, and then take it to the sewing machine and stitch it by putting your presser foot against the edge of the fabric and stitch the turned edge under. You are then going to place the right side of the facing against the right side of your fashion fabric, which means that you are going to see the turned edge of your raw edge finish as you look at it. You are going to stitch the facing beginning at the neck edge, going backwards, stitching forward, going backwards. We are then going to do a process entitled grading, and this is done to reduce bulk. You are going to look at your pattern facing, and you are going to trim the edge closest to the turned up edge down 1/2 of the amount of that seam allowance. The second edge that is going to now be extended above that, you are going to trim it down so that it is 1/8 of an inch longer than this trimmed edge. Part of your facing has a curve. In order to have the curve lay down flat, you are going to take your shears and you are going to clip. You're going to clip up to, but not through, the seam allowance, approximately 1/2 an inch apart. You don't want to overclip, you don't want to underclip. As you clip, make sure that you are just clipping. You are not cutting out a notch of the fabric. You are simply clipping the curved edge. I have left a portion of this sample longer so that you can see the difference between the original seam allowance and the trimmed and clipped seam allowance. You will go ahead and trim the entire seam allowance so that it looks like the portion that has been trimmed, graded, and clipped. The final step is called understitching, and it is the understitching that allows the fabric to lay flat against the body once it is turned. You will take your bodice front to the sewing machine, and you are going to pull the facing away from the fashion fabric. At the same time, you will want to confirm that the clipped, trimmed edges are facing the facing. You're going to put the needle right next to the seam edge, but not on top of it, on the facing side. And as you stitch, you are going to pull it a little bit so that this stitches smoothly without any puckers. And you're going to go slowly so that it moves easily around the curved edge. When the understitching is completed, you will then take it to the ironing board and you will press it to the wrong side. If you would have taken this to the ironing board and tried to press it so that it would lay down flat, you would have an ugly crease. But with the understitching, you have a nice, smooth edge. And so as you look at our shaped facing here, you see that we have a nice smooth edge. You are going to do this sample in 2 steps. You're going to have one set of the facing with it stitched on, right sides together, trimmed, graded, and clipped. And the second one, you will have the understitching so that you have the smooth edge. And so this particular sample is a 2-step sample. One showing the stitching, trimming, grading, clipping. The second with the understitching, and then the facing press to the wrong side. There are several other ways that you could finish this raw edge. For your sample, you are going to turn it up and simply machine stitch it as I gave you instruction. Often your pattern will call for interfacing as well. The interfacing stabilizes the edge and gives it a little bit more body so that as you wash the garment and as the garment is worn, the softness of the fabric does not become limp and not a pretty fit anymore. If the fabric calls for interfacing, what you would do is to cut the interfacing the same size as your facing, and then you would put the right side of the interfacing against the right side of the fabric, and you can do several things. You can serge it with the serger. You can put it right sides together and stitch it 1/4 of an inch, clip it, and then turn it to the right side, and it will give a nice smooth fit. So you would put it right sides together, stitch, clip, and then turn it so that your finished edge looks like this. Your serged edge would show the serging. Your interfacing attached by putting it right sides together would look like this. So those are 3 options to finish the raw edge, but we always need to do something with the raw edge. Either turn it under, serge it, or put right sides of the interfacing against the right side of the fashion fabric, stitch it, clip it, turn it,